my home area, Brixton, last night. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say that there was blood pouring down the streets. I mean, that was how people knew. If you speak to eyewitnesses, that was how people knew that this wasn't a part of the music video, which people first thought when they saw that the stabbing had taken place. They thought it was a part of the video being shot. The way that they knew it wasn't was because there was blood pouring down the gutters.
First and foremost, what a tragic event, and my heart and prayers go out to the family and friends of that young man who lost his life. But the thing I will say to you, the crime figures haven't just been rising now, they've been rising for the last 5 years. They've been on the march. You've had 2 record years in a row for homicide, and that's why when I ran for Mayor of London, I was very clear. More stop and search, more support for the police, in fact, 40,000 police officers on the road. I also wanted to change the conversation. We have to bear down a little bit more on the perpetrators. There's a small group of people in London causing absolute terror. They must take responsibility for that, and they must have the law thrown at them.
Well, I think one of the issues that we have is the brazen nature of it now. And there does seem to be a culture at the moment that is that you can do it so blatantly, be so brazen in front of people, and you know that it's going to be okay. And that's where I see the change from how it used to be. It used to sort of almost be in the dark shadows and in places you wouldn't expect so much. But this was in the middle of a busy high street.
But that's where the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, has failed Londoners horribly, because he has set this tone in London that is lawless, that people can do as they want on the street. He constantly provides excuses for people who are murderers. Look, I remember he had to be shamed into going to see the victims' families of some of the murders in London. And if you're outside of London now thinking, here they go again, always talking about London, remember this. Crime in London under Sadiq Khan has become so bad, we are now exporting it to other parts of the country. So you could be innocently minding your own business, and the drug dealers in your area could have come from London, because the Mayor of London will not get on top of these things.
To what extent, though, because you said it's got worse over the last 5 years, a lot of people will point back to austerity and say that was where the rot set in. Austerity, of course, a policy under the Conservative government. Now, I know you're a fair-minded guy, Shaun, and I know that you will acknowledge that there is a part of that that's got to be contributing to this. I guess what we need to resolve is to what extent that policy can be blamed for where we are now, and to what extent the Mayor's powers can be blamed.
Let's separate this out. There's no way I'm going to say to you that a reduction in police officers didn't have an impact in London. Of course it did. But remember, it was the Labour Party who destroyed the country's finances that led to us having to live within our means, tighten our belt. That's the first thing. Secondly, here in London, at that time, we had a lower level of crime. That's a statistical fact. And the growth of crime in London hasn't just been down to money. It's been down to a lack of leadership from City Hall, from the Mayor. Even today, I had a meeting with the police, and the police have extensive plans to make London safe over the summer. But we haven't heard the same from the Mayor. He hasn't even been asking them to push. And the problem here is, while you have a Mayor who takes sides, look how he dealt with Extinction Rebellion protests versus how he dealt with people trying to protect the cenotaph. While you have a Mayor who makes those decisions, provides he pushes himself between communities. He's causing communities to go at each other. We always have high crime in London. What we need is someone who provides the money for young people to do something positively, make sure that the perpetrators of crime are held to account. We mustn't make excuses for criminality, and we also support the police. Remember, I'm a black man who grew up in the 80s with all the baggage that means, and I'm still telling you, we must support the police. He has not done that.
I mean, that's an element of this, and this is a difficult question, Shaun, but do you think that it would almost be anyone who is not of your ethnicity, it would be more difficult on paper, at least, to try and make some of the tough decisions that will involve solving this? Because a lot of this is black on black crime, and I wonder if a part of this is Sadiq Khan worrying that not only is he going to lose the ethnic minority vote in London if he takes some bold action on this, but also that's going to involve some difficult decisions. I mean, is that a fair point to make, or am I way off here?
You're way off, and I'll tell you why. When I started talking about extra stop and Everybody came after me. You can't say that. You can't say that. Black people are disproportionately affected. Do you know what the black community said to me? More stop and search. Because the thing above all things where we're disproportionately represented is murder. If you're a black Londoner, you are 4 times more likely.
But that's what I mean. Do you think
neighbour.
Do you think Sadiq Khan is worried about?
No, what I'm trying to say to you, he shouldn't be, because the black community are not worried about if we're stopped and searched. What we're worried about is our children are being murdered. And it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, you must come out against that.
What else?
Repercussion for everybody.
What else on top of stop and search? We saw some very successful ways in which this was dealt with in Glasgow, and stop and search and arresting people out of this was a part of it. But you've obviously got experience as a youth worker. That has to be one element of perhaps a 4 or 5 pronged approach, right?
But maybe even the biggest element, and I made it quite clear. If I became Mayor of London, I would have found the £450 million that TfL had in their bank account because of unused Oyster cards, and I'd have spent that on youth work. You're correct when you say we can't arrest our way out of this situation, but the enforcement piece is an important piece, and you have to start there. But we have to give our children futures, black and white, and that's why you'll always hear me talk about youth work. I have more than 25 years experience in that field, and I see how it works. But it does not let the mayor get away with not making the streets safe. I questioned him the other day about the high murder rate in the black community, and he laughed at me. He called me an angry man. He's correct. I am angry. I'm angry why he hasn't got the guts to come out and say there's something especially bad in the black community going on. Let's work on it.
I'll tell you why I'm angry. I know you've got to go, Shaun, but I'll tell you why I'm angry, just to end this, is that I feel like he's making the easiest decisions going. What you're describing are really difficult decisions, and it takes one hell of a leader to make those decisions. The easy decisions are cycle lanes, closing roads, inconveniencing drivers, and doing all of that easy stuff because it looks good on paper and it gets him nice headlines, but it doesn't actually, it's not actually the really tough stuff that needs to be solved in London. And that's why I'm angry, because it seems to be a sense of priorities that are completely backwards.
You're completely right. And let me say this to your listeners outside of London. At some point soon, Sadiq Khan is going to pop up to try to be the leader of the Labour Party. Right? You must reject him. It doesn't matter if you're Tory or you're Labour or anything in between. You must reject him because he does not make big decisions. He will not be a leader. He'll do whatever suits him in the Labour.
Well, it looks good. The PR stuff. He'll do the PR stuff.
Of course he will. And the problem with that is all that other serious underlying social and economic problems get worse and worse and worse.
It's laughable. I mean, yesterday he's in a video promoting tourists coming to London. I mean, why would you come to London at the moment?